Today on An Imperfect Leader, our guest is Moises Morgenstern, the co-founder of Empat Speech, the industry leader for speech language services. Moises, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you, Peter. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here.
Well, it is so nice to welcome you to the podcast. You and I have gotten to know each other over the last year. Empat Speech really is, it is a groundbreaking company. And even earlier today, I was talking with a superintendent who was talking about leveraging technology, and I couldn't help but to weave in Empat into that conversation. So I wonder, would you tell our audience and our listeners a little bit about the company?
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. We created Empat Speech by looking at our own personal experiences. We saw early on in our lives how impactful it was for a child to get the support they needed from a professional, but also how hard it was originally when I'm from in Venezuela, and then after many years after in the US, how hard it has been and is still to get access to those services. And that prompted after a lot of self-reflection, and we come from backgrounds of working on technology for a long time, and we really come out of technology companies because we really wanted to come out to do an impact. And that got us to start a company where the full mission of Empat Speech is about unlocking the powerful tool of communication and particularly focus on helping grow access to speech therapy. And the way we're doing that is we've built a platform, an online platform that connects schools with experienced speech language pathologists and to help address the nationwide shortages of licensed therapists through the US. And we're doing it by leveraging technology that helps speech language pathologists improve outcomes and help grow access to more students with the care they need.
One of the things that I got excited about, and certainly I think about rural communities. I was a superintendent in Missouri, as you know, and there are a number of rural communities because there are 518 school districts in the state of Missouri, and yet only about 900,000 students. So a lot of smaller districts that don't have access, as you just referenced, to a speech language pathologist. For now on, we'll refer to them as SLPs. And sometimes they have to share them, between districts. And so sometimes an SLP will say, well, I'll come to you on Mondays and Thursdays, and I'm coming at this time. And that might mean for a child that they miss, PE, or they may miss band, or something that they ought not to miss, those enrichment type of experiences, just because they need the services. And so I imagine you hear from schools all about the benefits of Empat Speech, that they can schedule speech language pathologists for a time that works for that child's schedule, or they can offer SLP services to children who may be homebound or at a private school because children are eligible, but they're not going to leave their schools to come to the public schools for service. Or that they can increase the amount of service or decrease the amount of service based on the school's needs. If a child moves in or a child moves out, they're now not bound to that full-time equivalent, that FTE, but rather can leverage Empat Speech for times that meet their needs. So I'm wondering, did I miss any other benefits that you've heard?
These are all great, and it's the things that we hear from our schools. A couple of things to add is we also get, aside from staffing and supporting the needs of the students they have, it's also about providing supplemental services on top of the staff that they already have in some of the schools. Some of them are heavily loaded with some caseloads and can use some help. Some of them need temporary support. And we also care a lot about bilingualism. We come from Latin America, and some of those things that we offer is also bilingual clinicians that have content and have the experience supporting bilingual children.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, because you think about not every child who needs speech needs the same thing, right? That's the whole part of an IEP. It's individualized. And so you may have children who require additional support, and here you're able to step in and supplement. I love that. Now, what might be some things that opponents say? So whenever I'm working with leaders, we talk about what would proponents say, what would opponents say? How do you think about the long-term effects of any decision? And so I'm curious, what do opponents say? And then how do you solve them for schools?
This is a great question, and it's something we spent a lot of time thinking internally. As we try to stay true to our mission of really growing access and support all children out there. Some of these opponents or some things that people today are saying are very critical for us to hold. A few areas that come to mind is schools have shortage in staff, not only for speech therapy, but it's also for their staff in other positions. So one of the typical things that we hear is, well, But if we're going to do telehealth, that means that we need to find a person that is going to be bringing a child to the therapy room, or they're going to be supporting that child. And we completely get this. And we empathize so much with the schools being in the space of staffing and supporting some of these shortages. So what we do with schools is we really try to problem solve and help them. One is to figure out really effective ways to have real good support inside those sessions, but in ways that make sense for the school. The second is we could also support the school of getting some of those folks that are needed on the ground on those facilities. So,
Meaning that you would hire someone to come and provide that supervision.
and would help them, if not hire themselves, but we provide that person and find it for that in the region.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. So that you may do the legwork, but then it becomes an employee, a part-time employee for the school. Yeah.
Correct.
Kids do centers within their own classrooms. Every elementary classroom has a reading center where the teacher is pulling 3 or 4 kids who have a similar skill that they're working on and is sitting at a kidney shaped table and working with them. And then some kids are in their writing center, and some kids are doing listening to a book on tape. Is there anything that says that they couldn't do an SLP center? Actually doing their session with someone. They're being supervised by their classroom teacher, and sometimes there's also an aide in the classroom making their way around the classroom, make sure that kids are staying on task and things like that. What prevents Empat Speech from being done in the classroom?
It is very important to call out how we all experience COVID. And there's a lot of schools out there that when we talk about telehealth, they have memories of this really hard experiences back in the day, trying to scramble to provide not only therapy, but also academic support for students at their homes. And it is very important to also see of some of the bad experiences they've had with therapy in the past being done remotely. And this all comes down from the position of not all therapists have been equipped and trained to be able to do a very effective job at providing telehealth services. Telehealth has been here for years, and it's been proven to be effective for children to get the support. What we are working to demonstrate as a company is about how we hire really high quality clinicians, equip them with both training and amazing technology that is basically able to help them deliver high quality outcomes, but also is helping them grow the access to more children, because the shortages of SLPs, unfortunately, is not going away.
If you're just joining us, our guest today is Moises Morgenstern, the co-founder of Empat Speech, the industry leader in providing speech language services to school districts. Moises, I want to return to technology and leveraging it. I think you said some really interesting things. In the model that I use to advise others, there's a dimension called nested patterns. And inside that dimension are 2 terms, creativity and curiosity. And I really want to explore these terms with you in maybe a little different way, because it's one thing to provide SLP services via a telehealth model. It's another thing to apply innovation to your product. So with AI being such a buzzword for so many educators right now, what might be some ways that you'll be able to support children and special educators, even in the coming months, using AI?
Thank you for that question. And we're living in an unprecedented time of fast advancement of technology, with AI being a really key part of that. And I think what we believe in general of, if to drive innovation in this space, the first step is to really, really go deep and understand what are the clinical flows, what are the things that speech language pathologies are doing in order to provide high quality care. And AI is really, really effective and can be very well implemented as a first step to measure effectively what is the student progress, and then use that information to effectively individualize the therapy so that we can provide high quality care. Unfortunately, because of time and resources and tools available, not always clinicians have been equipped to have a very clean representation inside therapy sessions about where is that child and what are the next steps that can be done in an effective way to drive that progress. A second area, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier today in the podcast, is about there is plenty of research about how the more we stimulate and provide practice opportunities to students, the more effective we can be at helping them at their rate of progress and at their rate of improvement that they're going to have, and help them actually make that improvement. What we believe AI can be very effective is about building interactive environments where a child can go practice and continue that stimulation that has been started with a clinician in other settings. The one thing that I always like to say in this is parents, teachers, they're all very busy. They already care, but they're very busy and they don't want to be the clinician. They're not trained to do this and they are many times not comfortable with taking the role of, I want to learn how to do this and treat. But if you had technology that can play some of that role assisted by an actual clinician, and now the parent, the teacher can see how that's done and then support and be an active participant, that is very powerful in general because we want to get these skills to generalize. We want everyone in the child's life that is able and has time to be involved. We want them to be involved in continued supporting and stimulating these children.
If I were to talk to a superintendent and I were to say, look, I really want you to give this a chance, they would probably want to map out for a moment just to better understand. So let me see if I have this right. A child is identified as having a disability in speech or language and begins therapy. And that therapy may be one-on-one in person. In many cases, as you noted, there are a dearth of SLPs out there. So Empat Speech may be a great opportunity for a school to leverage high quality SLP services. Now the child is going to be practicing after their therapy session, and often that falls on they do it individually. They may practice correctly, they may not practice correctly. They may practice with a paraprofessional sort of supervising who is not trained in knowing whether or not they're practicing correctly. They may go home and practice, and their parent may not know. In this case, you're talking about technology that can really listen, maybe even guide to say, oh, that's not right. Let's try that again. And then I imagine it is collecting all of that data and sending it back to the therapist so the therapist knows where to start next. This child had 80% accuracy, 90% accuracy, 50% accuracy. So they know what either needs to be retaught or where they can move on. And then I imagine it saves a tremendous amount when it comes to the case manager having to compile all of that for the annual reviews or the triennial massive evaluations. Am I sort of capturing that flow?
Yes. And let me share a little bit of what you get with Empat Speech today is you can get quality services from all aspects that you would hire an SLP in person, all the way from assessment to definition of goals and treatment to direct intervention and the collaboration with everyone else outside to be able to extend that therapy. What we're working on and we've been working on through this year is about how do we build this practice opportunities where the technology, following the clinical judgment of a clinician that was done in therapy, can now extend that practice and dosage stimulation in other settings. And what that translates to is, as you're mentioning, capturing data from those engagements outside of therapy, which inform what the SLP can do outside in the next therapy session.
All right, I'd like to ask you a question that I ask every guest who comes on our show. How does the term an imperfect leader resonate with you?
Well, I think it's the perfect representation of what being a leader and being a human is. We're imperfect in nature, and therefore we cannot be perfect leaders. We cannot be perfect humans. What I believe we can do is grow our empathy and awareness, and with that information, choose to take action to improve and continue improving through our lives.
We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leader in After Action. And our guest today is Moises Morgenstern, the co-founder of Empat Speech, industry leader when it comes to speech language services. So in this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision that they made and then what did they learn from it? So let's discuss it. What happened?
Early in our journey, as we set out to grow access on child development support, we actually started with a pilot in Latin America. And our goal at that time was not particularly only in speech therapy. It was about how do we identify early developmental delays and disorders in children. We're focused on kids that were much younger, below 3 years old. And we understood it was a big need. The data said it. We spoke to professionals and everyone said how important it was. And we understood it from our own knowledge to identify it as early as possible, to get access to support as early as possible, especially in the early developmental years. So we went ahead and with that data, with that information, we set out to build a product. And we said, look, let's help identify kids And it was effective. We had panels of clinicians of different capacities, occupational therapy, psychology, speech therapists. And with the schools that we partner and with the entities that we partner, we were seeing this, but then we realized that it would be really, really hard to scale and get adoption of this. And why? Because there's such a massive shortage of treating clinicians. So going and identifying a lot of kids, which is very important and still needed, was creating more trouble to our already situation that you couldn't resolve. And also, these leaders, this was not the top of their priority list.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. You're working in a country. You are being told by so many, look, we know there are children who are exceptional, who have need, and they're going undiagnosed in terms of what they need. And your fix was not a problem. We can design something that's going to help you identify. And is it possible to say what got overlooked there is it is one thing to identify. Now you have an obligation to serve and provide services. And there was not yet a system in place to provide the services for children who had a diagnosis.
That's right. And I think that one of the biggest learnings from this journey and journeys in general about like trying to innovate is about one is the decision maker, how big in their priority list and the top priority of what they need to and want to act on is. Every decision maker, especially in the schools, have many, many different priorities. Does this fall in some of the biggest priorities that they can act? Two, do they have actively the resources and how easy it is to act once you give them a solution? And in this case, we were overlooking both of them. We didn't look at, is this really the top priority of all the things that they're going to act as at that point? And two, do they have the resources to act on this new piece of information that a child has a developmental delay? Very important.
Yeah.
Unable to act.
Oh, it's just agonizing, isn't it? I mean, because if you put yourself, you talk about empathy, you put yourself in the shoes of the parent who says, I knew there was something that just wasn't making sense. And you've helped us identify. And then for the system to say, yeah, I don't know what to tell you, because right now the priority in terms of children being able to access school in particular, or to have teachers in the classroom is where our focus is just on general education. And you're asking us to special. Oh God, I can't even imagine how agonizing that decision was for you, for your co-founder, for parents, for Oh my gosh, wow.
It's frustrating all around, and it's not the fault of anyone. It's just the state of where we are. Like we're in a situation where there's shortages, and what we realized, and that was what frustrated to us, is that solving big important problems is not the only thing that you need to focus on. It's about solving big important problems that can be solved and can be pushed to the next level to be solved end to end. And that's what actually drove us to then focus particularly in speech therapy and building a solution that we could actually end to end go from identification to delivery of service.
That's exactly the note. If I were to show you my notes that I'm just writing as I think about our conversation, and I wrote, now we can identify and we can serve.
Exactly.
And that's a big difference. What did you learn about relationships, or what new relationships were formed as you were experiencing this?
I think that one of the biggest learnings from relationships is about, I think everyone came to the conversations with really, really good faith and care for the children, which I love. And is why I'm so passionate about this space, not only because of personal experience, because now having worked with so many clinicians and educators and people, everyone have, as we do, the best interest in mind of the student. And what I realized from those relationships also is about really being empathized of actionability and what matters. And it goes back to what we're saying. And to build strong, effective relationships here, it has to be a value add both ways. And it's not just, we believe that this is very important and now you need to, at this point, change your priorities to do it. No, it's actually, let's really understand where you are and how can we truly add value to you by giving you not only a solution, but something that really moves the things that you are trying and working to solve for.
It's because I've had the opportunity to hear you talk with different school leaders and have conversations. It actually makes a lot more sense to me why you're so accommodating. Some people they enter and they say, look, this is what we do and this is how we do it. And you're not compromising in terms of the quality, but you're incredibly accommodating in terms of what it is that school systems or school leaders are looking for. And then you're trying to figure out, all right, well, how do we make that happen for you? And it's got to go all the way back to sort of this experience, it seems like, as one of those driving forces behind that.
100%. It was a big learning, and it all comes down to we're here for the students, we're here for the treating clinicians, and we're here to support it. That's the impact that we're trying to make. So we need to accommodate, we need to adapt, we need to be flexible, and we need to find creative solutions to make sure that these kids get the services they need.
What could you have done differently?
I've learned, I've had advisors advise me, I've had books read. It's a lot about how you ask the questions. It's a lot about um, you're not coming here to tell someone, here's my solution. Let's actually hear first the other person and then tell you what are their priorities? What are the things that they're trying to solve? And then let's try to identify if we can be a part of that solution. And if not, that is perfectly okay. And what we are here to do is really to together work on the things that really matter. And we need to all be at the right stage to do that. And if someone is not at this point trying to solve for those problems, and they will be in the future, then let's talk again in the future. And maybe I can help you for some reason or another solve your problems today. Because at the end of the line, this is all about long-term partnerships. This is all about how do we, on the long term, create a virtuous cycle of improvement and impact so that all these children are set up to thrive.
What do you mean by virtuous?
A virtuous circle is one that is not just I provided something and then the other side gets benefit. A virtuous circle is like we're all learning from each other and supporting each other in order to support the students. If we collaborate with a teacher and that teacher effectively has the materials and understanding of how to support a child, and then they come back to us for that student or another student and say, hey, this child made this progress or this child needs speech therapy, we get value to be able to deliver better service to that or other children. And that virtuous circle and cycle is what we believe will end up really growing access. Like we cannot do it alone. No one can do it alone. We just need to get as many people involved with less friction and effort so that kids get the benefit and everyone gets the benefit.
I appreciate the definition and the description. In the end, what was something that was good that came out of this situation?
Personally, it was an invigorating realization that this is where we should be and this is where we want to be driving progress, because seeing the kids being identified and having the conversation with the parents and giving them resources and just understanding that this is very important. It's what has led us to do multiple years of and we're committing this for the long term because we see the value, we see the impact, and we were excited to find that it's important. We just need to find a different way to solve it.
What advice would you give to an aspiring leader?
Yes, we're all imperfect, but one of the biggest things that all leaders have that want to drive results and impact is what I've learned over the years is patience and accountability. And I think that we have to hire really great people. But once we do that, we have to invest in the long-term success of them. And that only comes with, yes, accountability of these are the expectations, these are the things that we want to do. But there needs to be a lot of patience because everyone needs to upskill. I need to upskill. Everyone needs to evolve in order to continue evolving to the new challenges that arise as we're trying to do things that are really difficult.
Our guest today was Moises Morgenstern, the co-founder of Empat Speech. Moises, I'm so grateful for your time today. And, as I was thinking about all the different things we've talked about, right at the end there, you talked about patience and accountability, two incredibly important characteristics of any leader. You also wove through the entire conversation the importance and about relationships. We truly, in my mind, to use your term, and I know that others have used it as well, but thank you so much for this virtuous conversation. It really was. I learned so much from you, and I hope as others get to listen and learn from you that this continues, this cycle continues, and people get to learn more about Empat Speech and even become clients. I think that would be wonderful. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Pierre. It's always a pleasure. I always learn from you, and I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.